completed my MSc and MPhil in biology, specialization in microbiology, and I have been teaching since more than 16 years, earlier in Bangalore and later in various institutes in Davangere, and I have been guiding the students for CET, NEET as well as KVPY exams, and have produced some of the good results in Davangere, and now I am a faculty of Vidvat Academy since last 1 year and have been teaching biology both PU as well as competitive for the students. Welcome you all for the bridge course in biology, and you all have studied biology in your school days. The same thing you will be studying in detail when it comes to college level. Now, the very important and basic question is, why biology? Why one need to study biology is the basic question. Say when it comes to PU, you have different options. You can either opt for computer science along with the physics, chemistry and mathematics, or you can opt for electronics if the college is providing you, or you can take a combination of PCMB, that is physics, chemistry, mathematics and biology. Now come back to the question, why biology? Suppose if you are a NEET aspirant, hope you all know what is NEET, right? NEET is a common entrance exam or entrance test to enter into both medical as well as dental. Earlier, the state-wise exams were conducted for both medical as well as dental. Since last 3 years, it has been a common exam nationwide. And if you are a NEET aspirant, you want to become a doctor or you want to become a dentist, right? You need to study biology both in first year as well as second year, along with the physics and chemistry. Apart from NEET, if you are aspiring for CET, say through CET you can enter into various courses like BSc Agriculture or BVSC, what we call as a veterinary science. Say you don't like going into medicinal field, you don't like going into, or you don't want to become a doctor, or you don't want to become a dentist, then the second option is you can opt for either veterinary science or BSc Agriculture or any other entrance exams that include Ayurvedic medicine or Unani medicine or some other the medicinal fields if you want to enter. Again in CET, you need to attend biology paper compulsory. Along with this, it will also help you for the exams like KVPY. KVPY, a less known exam in and around Davangere. Since last year, the students have been taking it very seriously. Kishore Vaidyanik Protsaha Yojana is a central government funded scheme wherein you can take up the competitive exam both in first PU as well as in the second PU, and if you complete or if you clear through the KVPY exam, the competitive exam, right, you can enter into the institutes like IISC, Indian Institute of Science, or some other institutes like ICMR or any other central funded institutes, where throughout the course, that is, you will be completing both PG, UG as well as PG, undergraduation as well as post-graduation there itself, and throughout the period the central government will be giving you the scholarship and you can enter into the research field, the field of your interest. You can either enter into biosciences or physics or chemistry or whatever your interest is, right? So there also again the the biology, you need to study thoroughly, right? And majority of the students who enter into PU science field or science stream, their main intention will be NEET exam. A common exam conducted for both medicine as well as the dental. So for how many marks you are writing the NEET exam? You will be writing NEET exam for 720 marks. You will be writing exam for 720 marks, and you are supposed to attempt around 180 questions. These 180 questions include 45 questions of physics, 45 questions of chemistry. The remaining 90 questions you are supposed to attempt from biology. Now you know the importance of biology, right? So 90 questions, that is 50% of questions in your NEET exam are biology questions. Okay? So these 180 questions, each question will be carrying 4 marks. Each question will be carrying 4 marks, and you will have negative marking. Each wrong answer, you will be losing 1 mark for each wrong answer. So that is what is negative answering, negative marking we call it as, right? And these 90 questions that are from biology comes from both first PU as well as second PU systems. The same holds good for physics as well as chemistry also. So out of 90, around 40 to 45 questions will be from first PU biology, and remaining questions will be from the second PU biology. So you need to have basics of both first PU as well as the second PU thorough, along with what you have studied in the school level, with a good analyzing capacity will help you to get through the NEET exam. Now, if you ask me, how many students will write NEET exam every year? Last year, that is 2019, the number of students who attempted NEET exam were around 15 lakhs. So this year it could be more than that. And by the time you come to second PU and you take up the NEET exam, the number would go little more higher. So the number of students who wrote NEET exam in 2019 are around 15 lakh students. And what are the number of seats, medical seats available, which is around 75,000 seats. 75 to 77,000 seats are available for medicine in India, and in Karnataka it accounts for around 6,000. 6,000 medical seats are available for the academic year 2020. That means if you see the numbers, for every single medicinal seat there are around 100 students competing. Getting my point? Or so for every one seat there will be approximately 80 to 100 students competing for each seat throughout India. Because it's a national level entrance test, it is not like earlier, right? Only Karnataka students will get Karnataka seats, not like that. Any student who has a good rank can take up a seat in Karnataka Medical College also, right? So imagine the competition, and now look at the distribution of the marks or the distribution of the questions here. So biology alone accounts for around 360 marks. The more you study biology, more you can score in the NEET exam. So you will be writing in NEET, you will be writing biology paper for around 360 marks. So that gives you importance of why you need to study biology if you are an aspirant of medicine, or if you are an aspirant to become, or the material you require. Everything will be provided by the college and will be conducting the NEET exam every week according to the national level standards. Every chapter, every topic you will be writing the exam, so that by the end of the second year you will be thorough with all the chapters as well as all the topics. Right? That's about it. Or if you don't want to enter there, this again CET around 60 questions will be from biology. And in both CET as well as NEET exams, the bio is the scoring subject. You can score well if you go through the textbook thoroughly, if you read the textbook line by line, and if you attend all the exams that are given by the college. I'm sure, because it's my experience, you will be in a good position to score the maximum marks in the biology. Now, if you ask me what is the cutoff marks in NEET exam, the cutoff marks in NEET exam for a general merit student, I usually say it should be around 560 above. For 720, the mark should be above 560 for general merit students, I am saying. So here you can score up to 300 or 320 or more than 320 in biology itself. So that will give you a good ranking there. Getting my point? So, or if you want to enter into KVPY, again in the KVPY also the biology is the one subject where you can score the maximum marks. And I have prepared the students for the KVPY exam also. So I know how the paper will be, how the questions will be asked. So there also you can score the maximum marks. Now we'll have a brief discussion on how the biology is studied in a systematic way, which you might have studied in your school days also, where you might have studied in a very brief, right? So the biology, which is a Greek word, bio means life, and logi is to disclose or to study, right? If you look around yourself, or if you look around in the environment where you are living, you see enormous number of plants, enormous number of animals, a various category of plants and animals are present, and that makes the world a beautiful place, or that makes the planet Earth a beautiful place. And as you can guess, it is impossible to study each and every organism individually, isn't it? So it becomes very difficult, because the number of species that are present on the earth are so enormous that even if you take 10 lives, you will not be able to study the organisms individually. Only some of them you can study. Like what to do? How to study the living organisms that are around you, right? To study the living organisms around you, we classify the living organisms into various groups, which is called biological classification. So today's class we will be having a brief account of biological classification, wherein you will be studying the various methods that were approached from the beginning of the civilization to classify the living organisms into various groups, right? Then how do you define biological classification? Biological classification is a scientific approach. It is a scientific approach to classify different groups based on the similarity and dissimilarity. Similarities and dissimilarities among them. As a scientific approach to classify or to group the various organisms based on their similarities as well as dissimilarities. After grouping them, we place them under different hierarchical categories. We place them under different hierarchical categories. And come again. What exactly we do in the biological classification? We study various organisms in and around us. Then we make a comparison. What are the similarities that are present in them? What are the differences? The similarities means differences. Dissimilarities present in them. After identifying the similarities and dissimilarities, we place them under different hierarchical categories. Hierarchy means rank. Right? We place them under various ranks. And if you study each category, you will find certain common characteristics present in them. Say for example, the moment I say the word bird, you will get certain characteristics in your mind, isn't it? Say for example, all the birds have wings. With the help of wings they can fly. Their body is boat shaped. Their bones are hollow, make their weight very light. All these characters you get into your mind, isn't it? The moment I say human beings, you get certain characteristic features in your mind, right? Or the moment I say trees, you will have some common characteristics that is coming into your mind. That is what the classification is. Why you want to classify? See, you cannot go on studying individual organism. Say, you cannot go on studying all the plants that are present on the earth. Of course, that is done when the studies are specified, but in a broad way, when I say the plants or when I say the word tree, you will get into mind all the different types of tree. It could be neem tree, it could be mango tree, it could be coconut tree or any other tree. And you will have, or you can write down certain common characteristic features in them. Now, why do you want to classify the living organisms? There are many reasons to classify the living organisms, right? The first and basic reason is the human being. In the earlier days, the beginning of the civilization, the people wanted to classify the plants or animals as useful and harmful. So the moment you come to know something is harmful, you can avoid it, isn't it? So in the beginning of the civilization, the classification of living world was based on whether something is useful to the mankind or it is harmful to the mankind. So some plant, if you recognize it as a harmful or poisonous, you stop eating it, doesn't it? Or an animal which is identified as a dangerous, you cannot have it as a domestic animal, doesn't it? So initially the classification was purely based on whether the living organism is beneficial or the harmful to mankind. Later on, once the scientific study of living organisms began, the classification was based on the morphological features, that is external appearance, the physiological characteristics, that is all the physiology, that is metabolic activity, what we call the physiology that takes place inside the body of an organism or inside a cell, reproductive characteristics, the what method of reproduction an organism is adopting. Say if you consider animals, whether they are egg laying or they are the one that gives rise to young one, such kind. And along with that, phylogeny characteristics. Phylogeny means evolutionary history. Evolutionary history of an organism was also considered to classify the living organisms into various groups, right? With the invention of microscope, once the microscopes were discovered, and with the progress in the scientific field, as various experiments were conducted to understand the living world and various studies were conducted to understand the living world, much improved method of classification came into existence. The first attempt to classify living organisms into various groups was carried out by a scientist called Aristotle. Aristotle, that is around 350 BC before Christ, made a first attempt to classify the living world into various groups. And the characteristics that were a criteria, what we call as the criteria that was followed by Aristotle to classify the plants into various groups were morphological characters. The criteria that was considered by Aristotle to classify the living organisms were morphological. Morphology, external appearance. So based on the external appearance, Aristotle tried to classify the plants into three groups, namely herbs, shrubs, and trees. He classified the plants into three groups: herbs, which are very short or very small in nature. You can take an example of grass. Grass is the best example of a herb. Mint, what you call as pudina, is the best example of a herb. These were the short, very short plants with a very slender stem, you can say. The stem is not very hard or very strong in nature. Then followed by shrubs. Shrubs were little taller than the herbs, and in comparison they had a strong stem. To say the best example is hibiscus plant that you have seen around or you might have grown near your house. You might have seen growing near your house or any in your area or something like that. The hibiscus are very common in and around Davangere. This is the best example of a shrub. Then the rose plant is the best example of a shrub. They are not as small as a herb, but not as big as a tree, right? And the large ones were called trees. The mango tree, neem tree, coconut tree, like that. Based on their morphological features, the plants were classified into three groups. The same Aristotle classified animals also. Animals were classified into two major groups and were called Anima, Enima. Anima included all those animals in which red blood cells were absent. All those animals that did not have red blood cells were called Anima, and all those animals in which RBCs were present were called Enima. So, the very first attempt or credit of classifying the living organisms goes to Aristotle, because it was based on only morphological characteristics, that is the external appearance. the various group of organisms that had different characteristics came together. Right? So, various group of organisms that had a different characteristics came together, and the method of classification was very confusing. You could not come into a general characteristic feature, or you could not draw a general characteristic features for each group. Then this method was followed for a long period of time until the scientific study of biological world began. Then in the mid of 17th century, 17th and 18th century, or in between somewhere in the 17th and 18th century, a scientist by name Carlos Linnaeus, who is considered as father of biological classification. Carlos Linnaeus, who is considered as a father of biological classification, classified entire living world into two kingdoms. He classified entire living world into two kingdoms. And the classification system is popularly known as two kingdom system of classification. And he proposed two kingdoms, namely Plantae and Animalia. Linnaeus proposed two kingdoms to include all the living organisms and are called Plantae and Animalia. The classification was based on various criteria or characteristics, you can say. The classification of living world into two kingdoms, that is Plantae and Animalia, were based on various criteria. The first criteria was cell wall, whether the organism possesses the cell wall or whether the cell wall is present or the cell wall is absent. Then the second criteria, nutrition, whether they are able to prepare their food or whether the organism eats or they do not eat, whether they prepare their own food or they eat the ready food. What's the second criteria? Third criteria, response to stimulus. Stimulus, this touch, right? Whether they are capable of responding to a stimulus or not. The fourth criteria was locomotion, that is, whether the organism is capable of moving or not moving. Based on all these four criteria, the living organisms were classified into kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. So, under kingdom Plantae, or if you can have a comparative study, say on one side like in kingdom Plantae, Animalia, the first criteria, that is the cell wall, all the organisms in which the cell wall was present were placed under Plantae, whereas all the organisms in which the cell wall was absent were placed under Animalia. placed under animalia. The last one, locomotion. Here it was absent and here it was present. Now coming to the exam